Morning, brethren. Welcome to another new day and to another daily devotional. This morning we're thinking about the second commandment. Let me read the words of the second commandment to you as we find them in the book of Exodus, Exodus chapter 20 and verse number 4. This is what God says to his people. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. First commandment essentially was a commandment that had to do with the wrong God. God shows us in the first commandment that he alone is God. The second commandment has to do with the right way of worshipping God. In other words, you may have the right God, but you may worship him in a way that is unacceptable to God. That's an interesting fact in itself, that God is here saying, there is a way of worshipping me that I find unacceptable. God is not pleased with worship that is given to him by means of any visible representation, whether it's a statue, a picture, or whatever. There is a wrong way of worshipping God. That, I would suggest, is something that is foreign to the thinking of many today who profess to be Christians. I would suggest that many Christians tend to think that as long as they are worshipping God sincerely, that it doesn't matter what the form of the worship is that they bring to God. When in actual fact, God always has and still requires that worship of him must be according to his commandments and to his desire. We are not to worship God in self-will worship. What I mean by that? Well, quite simply this: self-will worship is worshipping God the way we think is best, or worshipping God in a way that appeals to us and makes us feel good. It doesn't matter how we feel with regards to worship. It's not about us. It's about God. And if God says, this is how I want you to worship me, then we as his followers, as his servants, as the worshipees, are to give worship to God in a way that pleases him. There's a very simple analogy in this. If my wife says to me, Robert, anytime you want to show me your love for me, don't bring me chocolate. Buy me nice flowers, and I would prefer roses. In fact, Robert, only buy me roses. Now, if I think to myself, well, I think it would be better if she had chocolate, or I think that chrysanthemums or lilies or irises or whatever are a nicer flower than roses, and present them to her, it'll not be surprising that my wife will not accept them. God says, this is the way you are to worship me. He gives us clear, positive instruction throughout the Bible, and here he makes it clear as to how worship is unacceptable. We are not to worship God by means of or using any visible representation of God. Pictures, statues, carvings, whatever. Whenever God was giving these commandments to Moses, down at the foot of Mount Sinai, his people encouraged Aaron to make them an idol. Aaron did so. The golden calf was born. The people may have argued, we are not worshipping the golden calf. We are only using the golden calf as a focus of our thoughts in order to worship the true God. God would not accept that. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above or in the earth beneath or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. There are those today within Christendom who bow down to images, to statues, who have pictures up in their worship buildings, and who would argue that they use these as a means of drawing near to God, of focusing their thoughts upon God. That they're not worshipping the statue, be it of the Virgin Mary or of the saints or whoever. They are worshipping God and using these visual things as aids to worship. That is something that God in this command forbids. You shall not make them, you shall not bow down to them. As Christians, we are to worship God, the true God revealed in the Bible, and we are to worship God in the way that He commands. And one of the things that God says is, don't worship me by use of images. Tomorrow, we look into this a little bit further. In the meantime, may God help us to think about these things and to work them through in a practical way in our own lives. God bless you. Have a good day, folks.